Hi, everyone. I will be talking about my migration policy proposal. It's going to be fun. First, the summary. Here are some suggestions pertaining to actions the President can take regarding changes in border security and immigration enforcement funding. It is important to keep in mind that immigration enforcement agencies have become the top recipients of federal law enforcement dollars. As a result, border enforcement has been slow to adapt to the challenges associated with these changes in the characteristics of migrants. Today's migrants usually turn themselves in to border officials to apply for asylum. Consequently, the asylum system has become overwhelmed, and an already overtaxed immigration court system faces historically unprecedented pressures. There is a growing need to build enforcement capacity and fund strategies that respond to changing migration flows. The most urgent border security needs are in buttressing the asylum and immigration court systems. Also, strengthening infrastructure that includes detection technology at official ports of entry where most illegal drugs pass through. Here's some background information regarding my migration policy proposal. Debate over the funding for the U.S. Mexican border security was at the cornerstone of budget negotiations that resulted in a partial shutdown for the federal government in late 2018 and early 2019. Debates around immigration enforcement funding have centered mostly on the president's pledge that a wall be built along the U.S. Mexico border. Yet, this focus on the border wall has eclipsed a harsher reality related to border security funding. Growth and investment in border and immigration enforcement has been successfully provided by Congress since 9/11. Such investments include a broad mix of support for Border Patrol and port of entry staffing, facilities, surveillance, and contraband detection technology, lighting, aircraft, fencing, and other equipment. Migration patterns at the southwest border are changing rapidly, and the United States is spending 34% more on immigration enforcement. Border enforcement has been quite slow in adapting to the challenges posed by changes in the characteristics of migrant arrivals. As border spending increases, there have been dramatic decreases in the numbers of Mexican migrants apprehended by the U.S. Border Patrol while trying to cross the southwest border. The arriving migrant population has shifted from young Mexican males seeking work in the United States to primarily families and children from Central America migrating for various other reasons. Some are economic migrants looking for opportunity, while others are seeking safety and protection from violence. 61% of all border apprehensions in 2019 were either of migrant families or unaccompanied children. U.S. border officials have had to deal with more vulnerable populations who are overwhelming existing facilities and processing capacity. Now I will be talking about objectives in my policy memo. The United States Border Patrol secures the borders of the United States by detecting and preventing illegal aliens, terrorists, and illegal trafficking of people and contraband. The main objectives of this policy memo are to outline the need to build enforcement capacity and fund strategies that respond to changing migration flows. Enhancement of line watch and sign cutting, traffic checkpoints, transportation checks, marine patrol, and horseback patrol are tools that can help prevent illegal and dangerous entry into the United States. The most urgent border security needs are in buttressing the asylum and immigration court systems. There must be a fair and impartial standard in place that reduces the number of asylum seekers and provides them with a pathway to citizenship. The immigration court systems must be set up to aid non-criminal aliens in securing citizenship to the United States. We must find a way to differentiate between hardworking and nonviolent immigrants versus immigrants who are convicted felons. Nonviolent immigrants deserve a pathway to citizenship, and the immigration courts must expedite this process. Also, it is important to strengthen infrastructure that includes detection technology at official ports of entry where most illegal drugs pass through. Other issues we can consider include the slow rate of integration between the United States Border Patrol's biometric database of illegal aliens and the Federal Bureau of Investigation's biometric database of criminals and terrorists. Also, the number of unauthorized aliens who die attempting to enter the country each year, the increasing attacks on Border Patrol agents, and the threat posed by terrorists along the barely defended northern border, as well as the more porous southern border. The opportunities and challenges in this memo are many. First off, the enhancement of border security measures along the southern border and guaranteed citizenship for non-criminal asylum seekers are two issues at ends with each other. More conservative Americans view border security as the more important measure, while the Democratic side sees the civil liberties of asylum seekers as deserving of more introspection. Securing a strong and safe border should be a more bipartisan issue, but both sides of the political spectrum have their own agendas at play. This memo promotes the enhancement of line watching, sign cutting, traffic checkpoints, transportation checks, marine patrol, and horseback patrol. These security measures allow for a safer border where illegal immigration is discouraged. Yet, the plight of the asylum seekers must not be ignored. There is difficulty for displaced persons seeking asylum in the United States. The lack of opportunities to legally access the asylum procedures often forces asylum seekers to undergo expensive and hazardous attempts at illegal entry. With over 3 million asylum seekers worldwide, asylum seekers face many pressures, most notably in the United States. Many asylum seekers are not seen as legitimate migrants and are treated as legal aliens. These are known as failed asylum seekers, and many are often placed in immigration detention before being deported. We must find a way for non-criminal asylum seekers to be granted an ability to work and access to health care. A more humane treatment of asylum seekers is necessary to promote a more sustainable and compassionate U.S. immigration policy. Here are the players and perspectives of my policy memo. Mexican immigration is a global issue that involves distinct players from all over the world, but 98% of all Mexican immigrants reside in the United States, which are more than 12 million undocumented and documented migrants. The amount of Mexican immigrants of indigenous origin in the U.S. ranges between 50 and 90% of the entire migrant population. My recommended options will not speak to numerous international relations, so I will not attempt to describe the international perspective. The most important players for our policy memo will be the U.S., Mexico, federal and state governments, United States Border Patrol, Mexican immigrants, and NGOs. Under our domestic and international law, it is the right of migrants arriving at the border to seek asylum. America must help asylum seekers because it helps maintain our position of leadership in the world. Once they cross the border, asylum seekers must deal with Border Patrol agents interrogating them in a strict immigration court process. Increases in Border Patrol staffing, construction of new infrastructure and fencing, use of advanced technology, and stronger partnerships and information sharing are key to maintaining a safe border. A safe border and fair asylum seeking process are paramount to ensuring a better immigration partnership between the United States and Mexico. Here are the 3 options I recommend in my policy memo. My first option is to process asylum claims more efficiently by letting asylum officers, not immigration judges, make the initial decisions in asylum cases. Migrants arriving at the border with strong claims would have their asylum approved more quickly, allowing them to bring their families to the United States rather than waiting years for a hearing. Option 2 is to bring back work to resettlement agencies by having the government contract with them to house families seeking asylum. Under this plan, families would be located in proximity to one another and have access to schools, medical facilities, and lawyers. Option 3 involves securing a safer border by enhancing border security. Technology, including cameras, fixed towers, and aerial and underground sensors, can help combat cartels crossing the border. Also, investing in the biometric entry-exit system at all ports of entry screens those who enter into the United States more efficiently and effectively. Here are the analysis of options laid out in my proposal. Option 1 would allow asylum-seeking immigrants to bring their families to the United States more quickly. Relying on immigration judges to process asylum claims would take years for immigrants. Those with weaker claims, knowing that they may be denied and deported, would skip the trip and avoid attempting to win asylum. Officers already decide many asylum cases, particularly for people who weren't stopped at the border, and conduct credible fear interviews that determine whether asylum seekers have a strong enough case to go before an immigration judge. Fair hearings would likely lead to more people winning their cases. President Trump, your administration practices malicious incompetence, which is a mix of bureaucratic dysfunction and intentional undermining of legal protections for asylum seekers. A possible drawback to option 1 is that relying on asylum officers will be costly and time-consuming at first. The immigration system is slow to change overall, so the transition to asylum officers is a necessary, albeit expensive one. Option 2 is important, and I'll lay out why. Option 2 avoids prolonged detention and the quick releasing of families at the border. Your administration has cut refugee admissions to record lows, which has forced resettlement agencies to close offices and lay people off. I propose bringing some work back to these agencies by having the government contract with them to house families seeking asylum. Families would be located near one another and have access to important resources. Although these asylum seekers would be monitored with ankle bracelets, their movements are not restricted. Under this option, asylum seekers are not locked up like criminals and are less likely to disappear into undocumented life in American cities. A major drawback of this option is funding for the resettlement agencies under your administration. President Trump, I hope you consider giving funding to resettlement agencies as it promotes a freer and safer immigration process. Option 3 secures a safer border by enhancing border security. Technology is implemented to combat cartel crossings and ensure a smoother port of entry process. A wall cannot perform the various functions necessary to apprehend crossers, screen migrants, and detect illicit behavior. However, the Department of Homeland Security staffers, Border Patrol agents, and increased technology can. Technology, such as cameras, fixed towers, and aerial and underground sensors, can aid in combating cartels that use highly sophisticated technology to cross the border. Investing in the biometric entry-exit system at all ports of entry helps screen those who enter in the United States. The need for a new 21st century approach to border security is something that politicians continue to fight on Capitol Hill. Placing certain technology in the right places and training the skill set of personnel in key agencies will make America safer. Here are my implementation and recommendations. Of the 3 options outlined above, I would recommend a combination of option 1 and 3. The rights of asylum seekers to a speedier immigration process is equally necessary to securing a safer border through the most advanced defensive technology. Encouraging a fair process for immigrants to reclaim their lives in the United States, whether they be asylum seekers or refugees, makes our country seem more notable and a just place to migrate to. This option allows asylum seekers in particular a more expedited process towards resettling in the United States through legal means. Asylum seekers deserve a better chance at finding refuge in our country. The immigration process is lengthy enough for migrants with extensive skills and intact families. Asylum-seeking immigrants deserve easier access to securing a pathway to citizenship. Option 3 outlines how increased border security is equally, if not more important than option 1. Without a strong border that contains the most up-to-date defensive technology, there will be no fair immigration process. Mexico and the United States in particular rely on a strong border that promotes border security and combats criminals from coming across into either country. I know your administration is tough on border security, but the proposed border wall is not the answer. Read back over my technological proposals to border security, as they are more practical and less costly. A border wall will only drain our economy of its resources instead of allocating these resources in more effective means. Well, This is my entire proposal. Thank you for listening.